Listen to that. Silence. Right now, this TBM is just metal and a composite sitting on the ramp, but in the next 10 minutes we're going to wake up the beast. Welcome back to week 3 of mastering the aircraft. In the last video we programmed our flight into the G3000. Today it gets real. We are going from cold and dark through the critical engine start sequence of the Pratt Whitney PT6 turbine, and finally we'll learn how to taxi this powerful aircraft without burning up the brakes. Starting a turboprop isn't like starting a car. There's a specific choreography to follow, and one wrong move can lead to a very expensive hot start. Let's ensure that that doesn't happen. Before we touch the key, we need to prepare the aircraft. Assuming you've done your exterior walkthrough, let's jump inside. So, to get prepared, we of course need to go to the checklist. Some of these elements have also been discussed in the video of week 2, but I'm simply going to them again to make sure that you're up to speed. So you can hit the tab key, which opens this nice EFB. Then if you press the aircraft icon, you will find a lot of options, including the checklist which you just saw. You can see that I marked off already all the items of the pre-flight inspection and also the inside inspection. If you want to get some help going to these items, you can always press this nice eye icon, which brings you up to the position where that button is, or in this case where a lever is, right? Could be anything. Once you're ready, you can go to it and you can check off all the items until you completed all 24 items. But be aware, there's an official TBM 930 manual which you can find in the description of this video, which shows the real checklist, because the real checklist is a little bit longer and contains some very specific steps which you can follow, but of course they're not necessary in case of using it in Flight Simulator. In my previous video, we also did these steps, right? We already set up the crash leveler, which needs to be set to up. And then we made sure that the battery was switched to on. I also made the remark that if you switch the battery on, it will start draining, which means it will start to say kind of reduce charge, which can become critical. So be aware of this. If you're using the battery, then it will drain and it could result in some issues starting the engine. So if there's a ground power unit, then consider connecting to it, because it will say kind of save your battery. So we're going to make sure that the battery selector is set to main. And then we need to check the fuel on board, right? The fuel on board, that's being displayed over here. So we're gonna click this one. And then we can check the fuel on board, which has a nice blue circle on it, 71, that's good enough for now. So I'm gonna make sure that it's being checked off. And then we need to check the battery. And as you can see, according to the manual, it needs to be set to 24.5, well currently set to 24.4, so we're on the critical edges. So if you wait too long, then you don't have enough battery power anymore, you can't start the engines, but for now, we can say accept it. But we can also, of course, connect the GPU if we want. But for now, let's keep it like this. This one, you can't complete it completely because it contains two items, either the battery or the GPU, right? You don't need to do both. And then we're coming to that critical part, right? Starting the engine. And starting the engine comes in a few steps. So again, make sure that you follow the inside inspection list, which also validates if, for example, the parking brake has been set, but also make sure that the lights are, for example, turned on. Besides that, there's no need to kind of use the real checklist, which is part of the manual from the TBM 930, but you can still do it, of course. So let's go to this step, right? Let's first make sure that the ignition switch is set to auto, and I'm going to reset the view. And keep in mind that you can also use these nice shortcuts, right? If I press, for example, Shift 4, I will focus on the autopilot. If I press Shift 5, I will focus on the throttles, which we need later on. And if I press Shift 6, and that's the one we currently need, is we can find that nice ignition switch, which we need to set to auto. And as you can see, it already has been set to auto, so we can quickly check it off. Then we need to make sure that the auxiliary boost pump is set to on. The auxiliary boost pump can be found over here, right? You can enable it, and then you hear that, let's say, ping, right? That ping informs you, it tells you something. Hey, I did something, so make sure that you pay attention to that. That's good, because that's what we need, right? Once we've done that, we can, again, make sure that it's set to on. Now the next step is simply a manual step, and the manual step is to make sure that the propeller area is clear. Right, the propeller area, if we zoom out, or if we look at the aircraft, we can see that the propeller area is clear, right? But you can also do it from the cockpit. So let's do that. Let's hit the reset view, and then we can look around and make sure that the area is free, because we don't want to hit some people with this propeller, of course, because that's not good. Now we've done that, we can check it off, and we can go back to the starter switch. The starter switch again can be found on the top of the cockpit. And it's over here, right? Here's the starter switch, and if you switch it on, it will automatically switch it off after 2 seconds. And you will see that things will start to happen, right? You can see the propeller starts turning, and you can also hear that nice sound. So I will, well, likely you can't hear it because I switched on or turned down the volume very low, but let me increase the volume a bit. So I boosted up the volume, and you can hear the engine sound, right? It's not that hard yet, but believe me, that will come. So we can check off the list, and then we're going to go to the throttle. Again, the throttle, you can exit either by pressing Shift F5, right? And then pressing Shift F5 to return to normal view, or you can use your mouse cursor to move. It really depends on what you prefer. So I'm going to set it to low idle. Now, if we would use the different view, let me do that. I'm going to reset the view and then move around a bit and then move to that. You can see that the idle low is kind of here, right? So you can move it around a bit to the next area, and then you will hear the, let's say, rotor or the engine catching up. This also is the time that you will need to look at the low idle position when the gas generator speed NG reaches 13. And that's what I of course forgot to do. I should have told you, but if you press Shift 3 I can show it right away. So the NG1 can be found over here. So what you need to do is you need to wait and set it to low idle when the NG, which is over here, is pointing 13%. If you don't do that, well, you're not screwed, but hey, it's not good. The NG percentage stands for the gas generator speed. It will start climbing, and then once it hits that 13%, then you can say switch it, and then it will start to increase further. You will see that the propeller RPM starts to increase, and the other values such as the ITT also starts to increase. So what does that ITT mean? The ITT means the Interstage Turbine Temperature, and you should have a very close look at it, because if you're doing it incorrectly, then the aircraft or the engine, say, won't survive that long, right? If it's climbing towards 870 degrees, then it's officially called a hot start, right? You must immediately pull the conditioner lever back to cut off to save the engine, because if you pick the engine too much, then it's not good. So the idle temperature is of course the green area, right? So as long as it's in the green area, it's okay. And what you will see is if you will increase the throttle when taking off, you will, say, very likely get a warning or something that the temperature is too high. In that case, reduce the temperature, right? Reduce it, because else you will damage the engine. So we set this. Then if the NG has not reached 30% by 30 seconds, or by 50% for 50 seconds after engine start, aboard the engine. So in some cases what you will see is that this nice, say, gauge is getting stuck at 30, or sometimes getting stuck at 50. If you see it happening, then something is wrong, you might have forgot something, and then you need to directly switch the engine to abort, right? And to abort the engine, you can say you need to move the throttle, let me do that, like this, to the original position, and make sure that the engine starter, which is here on the top, is set to abort. That can be done right? We don't need to do it now, but it's recommended to do it if you're, let's say, facing an issue. Then the gas message starter should not remain displayed when the NG reaches 52%. Well, we can have a look at that, right? By pressing Shift 3, we will zoom into this view. And these are the gas messages, which you find over here, right? These are all the messages which you need to keep an eye on. And here you see that it's not, I would say, being illuminated anymore, not blinking. There are some other things blinking, but we can, let's say, kind of ignore it for now. So the engine is ready. But we're not ready to move yet. To move on, we need to do some other things, right? So let's click this item. Now you can see item number 7 of the 7 is complete. And this is where we need to continue, right? Set the throttle to flight idle taxi position, middle left. And that's where I need to explain something. As you can see, it's already moved to this position, but the throttle can be moved multiple directions. And you can do that by right-clicking it with the mouse cursor, or of course if you've got, let's say, a different joystick, you can use the other options to kind of configure it so that it will move to the left side. Because also things will happen, right? You can see that it now starts to reduce some things, so let me move it, and then I will shut up for a few seconds, and then what you will hopefully see is that it will start to increase some things, right? If I zoom in again on, whoa, here we go. If I zoom in over here, you can see that the prop RPM starts to increase again. Also the temperature, say, kind of increasing. It goes very slowly, but it happens. And that's perfectly normal if you switch to the taxi position. So that's a kind of a hard recommendation, right? So we did that. Then we need to move the, let's see, sorry, the auto aux boost PMP to auto, which is over here. And we can switch it to auto. And then mark it as completed, and then the fuel selector, we'll press this icon so you can see it from the front. We can switch it to auto. This, I would say, results in that the fuel tank is automatically selected based on my understanding, and that's, I would say, kind of recommended, right? If you don't do that, then things will go haystack. Now there's another very important thing, and that's the AP trims. Now you might ask, why do we need to enable it? Well, if you leave it as in this position or leave it in the AP off, then the autopilot simply doesn't work. So make sure that if you want to use the autopilot, that it's switched to on, because else it won't work and you can't enable it. You can press the option 10 times, and the autopilot, right? It can be found here, the master button, and then nothing happens. And I also faced it once, and I simply skipped this item on checklist. Then the generator selector, which is over here, right? It needs to be set to main, so it's already set to main, as you can see. So we can switch it off. And then the bleed air, and the bleed air, where do we find it? Well, let's use the eye icon, right? The bleed air can be found here, and it needs to be set to div max or to auto. You can see that the number of messages in the CAS are, say, decreasing as we speak, right? Stall no heat, PTOT no heat, left and right. Say that's kind of, between brackets, normal. So now we completed all these items, and we're almost ready for taxiing. But of course, there's some more to happen. Because we want to get rid of these messages, right? These messages, how can you get rid of them? Well, you can use these nice systems, because here you can see the PTOT left and the PTOT right. Those are referring to this message over here. So I can switch them on. And if you switch them on, you will see that the messages are gone, right? So 2 switches and then everything is gone. And then optionally, based on the weather conditions, you can enable the inert SEP. So let's enable it for now. That's good. It has to do with weather conditions. And where does it look? And what does it mean? Well, this is the nice to know for this week. The inertial separator, it's a switch, which we just discovered. And the TBM has a massive air intake that sucks in air like a vacuum. When you flip the switch, a heavy metal door inside the intake closes. Right, heavy objects like ice or rocks are rejected out of the bottom, saving your engine from foreign object damage, FOD, and we'll turn it on for taxiing today. So keep in mind that it does something, right? Let me go to the outside, and right, the inlet is over here, right? So the inlet, there should be now a door, which is almost hard to see, but there's a door. Maybe you can make a video about that, or maybe I can add a screenshot of that in this video so you can see it more clearer. Let me do that so you have a better understanding of this. So now it's time to start moving around, right? So let's do that. We can see everything is clear, right? The engines are running. You can see the heats coming from the engines. And by the way, this is also pretty interesting because on the left side you will find the flight conditions. The flight conditions, day, night, VFR and LFR, but also what flight conditions are allowed with the aircraft, but also the maximum takeoff weight, the landing weight, and here you can see that weight which you can configure inside the G3000. On the right side you can see all the speeds, right? The speeds, those are the indicated air speeds. Those are the maximum speeds which you can fly, so keep an eye on them, or at least make a note of them if you want, of course. If you don't want, it's really up to you, I would say. So everything is okay. We can switch this one to the MFD. Well, I did this already, and then I said init, and then say accept initialization. For now, don't do this normally, but I simply did it now. But don't do it normally. Map sync. You can switch it to, well, let's do it like this. That's to make sure that the maps are synced. But this is okay, right? It's optional. You don't need to do that. So the flight plan is already in, so that's good. Let's get started, right? So let's see if we can be pushed back, right? Because you can kind of do full throttle and then turn around the aircraft. Because currently we're in this position, right? So we could do full throttle and then say follow that yellow line and then follow it up until we are ending up at the taxiway. But of course we need to do it official. So let's do it official. Let's go to the ATC in this case, which you can find over here. And then say, okay, hey, where do we want to remain in pattern?
Lord Ground, Dollar Papa Hotel Yankee Delta Yankee with Mike. Request taxi for takeoff. Close traffic.
Dollar Papa Hotel Yankee Delta Yankee. Taxi to and hold short of runway 02 via taxiway November 8, November 7 Mike Charlie 1 Delta. Contact tower on 119.05 when ready.
Taxi to and hold short runway 02 using taxiway November 8, November 7 Mike Charlie 1 Delta. Dollar Yankee Delta Yankee.
So we got approval to taxi, and if you say go outside the aircraft, you can see in which direction you want to or you need to taxi. And that also brings on another topic, right? How do you get these things? Well, you can go to your settings menu and enable them, because it could be that you didn't enable those assistance options. So if you go to the assistances, you will need to scroll down and there you will find the visual assistances. Inside that section you will find the taxi ribbon, and the taxi ribbon can be enabled. You can also press the Alt and the letter V from Victor to enable or disable them. But for now, let's let them be enabled. And let's go inside the aircraft again. And let's see if we can, I would say, move it forward. You can also, of course, request ground service and then ask for pushback. That's really up to you and what you prefer. So I'm going to remove the parking brakes. That's done, right? Let me bring the yoke back. And then I'm going to slowly increase the throttling. So we're going to make sure that we're using this 850 horsepower. And then let's see if we can move it forward. Be very gentle with the throttle, right? So move it slowly, because what you will see is that it will accelerate very fast, and once it has accelerated, press or decrease the throttle again, because if you don't do that, you will go very fast. But don't press it too much, because this engine also has a reverser, and reverser, as you can already imagine, that will, let the aircraft go backwards. And how can you figure it out? Well, you can figure it out on multiple ways. First thing is to experience it yourself, but also there are some additional views which you can enable in Flight Simulator, which show those gouges on the bottom. I don't have them, right? They're called the HUD display. Search for HUD in the assistance window and they will find them. I won't enable them for now because I don't think it's realistic. So we're gonna taxi. Taxi over the runway, or taxi over the taxiway, of course. And then we're gonna see if we can fly away. Now, according to the manual, it's not recommended to use the brakes a lot. Let me double check. Yeah, I forgot to switch on this one. Need to set to taxi. It's not recommended to, say, use the brakes. So what you could do is you could decrease the engine power, then it will go into the reverse mode, and if it goes into the reverse mode, then you of course are also decreasing power. So it's really up to you if you want to do that. Let's say it says it better for the brakes, so yeah, I would say I would do it, but again, it's really up to you. So we're taxiing as we speak to the runway, right? Nothing special about this. So you can also skip this part and then continue, let's say, when we reach the runway. Although, I must be honest, we're not gonna take off today, right? So we're not gonna take off. I simply show you some best practices, how to start the aircraft, but also how to taxi and how to prepare yourself for the break. Although, should we take off? Yeah. Let's do a small takeoff, right? Let's do a small takeoff. Don't do the entire flight, but let's do a small takeoff and then, say, do the takeoff again next week for the other video. That's already week number 4, right? So it's pretty interesting. So while we're taxiing, right, we can increase the speed a bit if we want. I'm using the Xbox controller currently to fly. Yes, not the best solution to fly, but hey, it's something you can use, of course. It really depends on what you prefer. I like the Xbox controller because it simply allows me to move around a bit. And also it's easy to fly while recording a video. Normally when I'm, let's say, flying without recording, then I'm not using it. But for now I thought that this would be the most nice option for now. So here we go. This is the aircraft, right? The nice thing about this view, right, is that you can still control the aircraft. That's, let's say, a little bit the hard way with the drone view, where you can't do it. And let me also decrease the power a bit. And then I want to apply some brakes, right? Because I simply want to, say, make sure that I don't cross that line before getting the right approvals. So here we are. So can I put it like here? Set the parking brake. For now, you will see the alarm goes off, but that's normal because we switch on the parking brake. And then we're gonna do the well, we did this one already. Well, almost. LV, taxi lights, parking brake, and then before line up. That's where we are. So park brakes are on. So then the landing lights. And the landing lights, you simply need to turn this option to this one. And then we're going to switch on the navigation light. We can switch on the strobes. Ignition, auto, or... strobes, sorry. This one. Ignition, the ignition right can be found over here. You can either set it to auto, which is the default option, or you can set it to on. I decided to leave to auto. Same thing is for the aux BP. We also leave it on. The fuel selector is also to auto, fine for us. And then the DI system. Now let's look at the temperature. Is it really bad? Well, it's, say, yeah, it's not that. So let's make sure that we are ice light is not, but the ice shields are all nice, right? So this is also where you can see that the lights are starting to illuminate, which informs you that this has been, let's say, enabled for now. And then this one has been done already. This one also, trims need to be set to takeoff. And that's, I would say, kind of a part which I'm still struggling with also, is these are the trims, right? And the trims need to set to take off, which means that they, according to the manual, need to be in the green area. But when I tried it, some weird things are happening, because it said adjust the elevator, rudder and aileron trims for takeoff in green sectors. And these are the green sectors, as you can see. But if I do that, then weird things are happening. So I will leave it for now. I'm not sure if you have experienced it differently, but I will do it like this. Then the flaps, maybe has reset the view. Reset the view, I said. Flaps are over here, right? We can put them one position down. Oh, one position down. Bleed air has been set to auto, which is normal. And then the fuel gauges, we need to check them for imbalance, right? You can use shift 3, and you can see that both of them are good. So that's fine. Altimeter settings, which can be checked over here. We need to check it based on the ATIS information, but I did that already, so making it as completed. And then we can set the altitude, and the altitude button is this one. And if you move it, let me move around a bit, then you can see that now, if you look very closely, this value starts to increase, right? So I can set to, for example, 2500, and that's where you can use the autopilot for. Then the score code, only required for IFR, since we're flying VFR, you don't need it. And then we're good to go. And then we're almost ready for takeoff, right? So takeoff, but first ask for permission to take off. So we're gonna tune into the tower and then say request clearance.
Lure Tower, Dahar Papa Hotel Yankee Delta Yankee. Ready for closed traffic at runway 02.
Dahar Papa Hotel Yankee Delta Yankee. QNH 1008 left closed traffic approved. Cleared for takeoff runway 02.
Cleared for takeoff runway 02, Dahar Yankee Delta Yankee.
So I'm gonna make sure that we switch off the parking brake again. Let's switch to off. So it's kind of hidden behind the yoke, right? So be aware of that. So I'm gonna increase the engine power again. So here are the items which you need to pay attention to when you're, let's say, when you're flying, right? There are some things you need to look at the prop RPM. I will show it in a few seconds before we really take off. We need to look at the torque at power to reach the 100% throttle, and then also make sure that there's a positive climb. Set the parking brakes. That's kind of special, but hey, that's a recommendation which they give you. So let's hit the braking again. So what do we need to do? We need to check the RPM, right, which is over here. The RPM is over here. It needs to be in this green area. Then the brakes must be released. We already did that. Torque must be set to 100. That's this value, which will go up to 100%. Then pitch up the plane with 10% when having sufficient, say, power, speed, sorry. And then when the plane starts gaining altitude, set starting parking brakes and retract the landing gear. So that's kind of a special thing, but it's recommended. Then if the indicated airspeed is less than 150 knots, then do flaps up. Else I would say you can do it later on. So for now I'm gonna hide the checklist. I'm gonna reset the view. Like I said, reset the view. And let's apply full throttle. Check it over here. It's good. You can see we're gaining speed pretty fast. So here we go. So this is how record to this, to take off with this aircraft. Right, once we're good, we can do gears up, but we of course forgot to do the parking brake. Also something which I wasn't aware of. You can switch it on and then, but the most irritating thing is that you've got a complete red blinking thing over here continuously. So I'm not sure if I would say if it's officially recommended. I didn't look at the official checklist, but I think it's also part of that one. Right, you can see the number blinking, and now we're airborne. And now we go outside and we can see this nice TBM, right? And this is also where we're gonna end this video. So let's do a quick roundup. In this video, we looked at how to start the aircraft really from scratch, right? I skipped some steps, I admit. And we looked at how to taxi your way to the runway. I explained that you shouldn't use the brakes, right? Because it's bad for the brakes. And you should benefit of that nice system which is in the TBM itself, because it will drive automatically, as you could see, right? With a minimal number of throttle, you can even go forward. Now in the next video, we're gonna really take the aircraft airborne and have a closer look at all those gouges, and I will point out where you need to look at. So see you back next week.